Welcome everyone to another Grand Masters class. We're here today with some of the finest solo laners in the world to talk about King Arthur. We've got Fineokay, we've got Nika, and we've got Jarcorrr. And I guess there's multiple ways to really tackle this, but the first question for a lot of these gods is really just what makes them so good? Why do you want them on your team? And so Fineokay, I'm going to jump to you first because Ghost has picked it a lot. What makes King Arthur so great?
He's just one of those characters that doesn't really lose lane ever. Doesn't matter what the matchup is, he can always do well. And as opposed to last year, where last year he was kind of just picked for like winning the lane, he's also just really good in team fights now with the builds that are available to him, and the items and just the team comps and everything. He's just really good in the meta. So he's kind of just a character that you can't go wrong with, and he's also just one of the better characters in the game because he has like 8 abilities and he has a lot of ways to outplay people with his abilities and his combos. So he's just kind of like a pick that will always be good, at least with the current kit.
And Nika, for you, is it pretty much the same thing, where it's just he has kind of a lot available to him and he wins lane pretty consistently?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what Fine said. I think he's still one of the best gods that allows you to like play through solo lane and like kind of like a hard carry pick if you can get him slightly ahead. Obviously, a lot less than last season because like Glad Shields is gone, but he still pretty much does the same in fights. Like Fine said, you can just run a fight on your own. He has so much CC as well. Like you can facilitate a lot for your team too.
And Jarcorrr, are you in the same boat? Like for Sanguine, you just kind of lock him in because you know you're going to be successful for him, or do you have maybe more niche, I guess, qualifications for King Arthur?
Yeah, I agree with Nika a lot because like you can facilitate a lot for your team because that god just does everything. He has a cripple, he has a knock up, he has a slow, he has a stun, he shred rotation too, he's three, so he basically like does everything. So it's like crazy how good that god is.
Yeah, he's fun, right? I guess when it comes down to it, and he's really good at dominating the lane, as you had mentioned. But and fine, okay, you had kind of mentioned this, and I'll jump back to you. And I kind of want all of your opinions on this, but he was gone at the beginning of the year. I mean, there was a Glad Shield nerf, and that kind of took him away. And then he just kind of came out of nowhere. At least it felt like he came out of nowhere. So what brought him back into the meta? Fine, let's start with you. But like, what made you like start picking him up again?
Um, it's partly like people figured out like a pretty good build with him, and sometimes that takes some time to figure out. But I also think people were just overestimating how much he relied on Glad Shield. You know, it happens a lot with characters, like where people think that a character is only good because of like one item, and then they'll change that item, and then everybody just assumes that the character is like you throw the baby out with the bathwater, kind of. And people kind of did that with Arthur, and it took some time before we kind of just realized that maybe we were a little bit wrong. Like I said before, a character with that many abilities and that many like outplay options. The Jarcorrr said it as well. He has so much CC, and also just the fact that he has that ultimate, the charge ultimate, that can just completely change like a 1v1 or change a team fight because it just does so much damage and it's really hard to beat. I don't know. People just kind of figured out the right build, and then you came into team fights and started clicking all your buttons. You're like, wait a second, if I just go Stone of Gaia, I heal just as much, and I also am doing more damage and also am tankier. So yeah,
You get that weird, hey guys, wait, I'm still really good at this moment. And Jarcorrr, like for you, was it something like you had kind of seen like maybe somebody else play, or did you just one day have like, yeah, I want to play King Arthur here and see how it goes, and that just kind of clicked with you and it worked out?
Yeah, I feel that what happened is people just stop using it and a lot of other characters use like Rise Up. I think that was when Amma was like picking it a lot because she was like so OP like by then. They left her like 2 times in a row and now she's struggling. But yeah, so yeah,
And Nika, I feel like for you it was probably any excuse to not play Amaterasu for your team. Like, well, how did he come up in your team's discussion for someone that you
Well,
start playing
I
suddenly?
I kept trying to make him work in ranked, but it just didn't feel as good as some of the other top picks at the time. But like over time, like Fine started playing him a lot in SPL, and obviously you could see that like the god still has a lot to offer. So I just played him a lot more with like the builds people were going, and I mean slowly like Amy got nerfed, for example, and like other stuff changed as well. And I think Arthur like definitely rose up a bit, like Jarcorrr said. I still don't know if he's like the best, but he's definitely up there, like a top 3 solo pick in my eyes. Like you can do so much with him, like we spoke about earlier. But yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed playing him, so I'm not going to complain if he's back.
And I guess Nika, just right back to you. Does he work kind of anywhere? Like, I mean, it's been mentioned like he's got good CC, pretty good damage in the late game team fights as well with his survivability. Like he brings so much to the table. Does he just kind of work with anybody, or do you really need maybe like a specific style jungler with you or a specific team comp to build around him to make sure he works that well?
I mean, I think you can play Arthur with anything, but I think if you're picking Arthur, you probably want the team to play around you. Like you want pretty high pressure, like a support that can run it down a blue with you. I think you want to avoid being against healers as well. I have not enjoyed playing against Ra with Lotus Crown as Arthur. It's pretty tough. You kind of rely on your team to do a lot more because your damage is pretty limited. But other than that, I think he's pretty solid into anything.
That just feels like a general rule, right? Like, don't play into healers. Feels a lot better when you don't. It's a little easier to manage. What about for you, Jarcorrr? Is it any team comp that you can kind of plug and play in, or do you have like specific people that you'd like, let's say like Panatom or Shinto, to be on to really help maximize your King Arthur?
I think what Nika said was like a pretty good point. Like, have a good support or jungler that can be with you and win team fights a lot. Like, does like blue in base, bad can in base, or whatever. Because like you're gonna create so much space for them. So it's gonna be so easy for them to like play the game when you're on that god. Because you can like facilitate every single of the abilities with your ability. So they won't miss if you don't miss. So yeah, good way to see it.
And fine, I guess because you were bringing it in kind of before everybody, or like you started it a little bit earlier. Were there certain picks that had to be on your side, like when you're locking that in, whether it was in scrims or an actual pro league play, or did you just kind of one day go, yeah, we're going to do this. It doesn't matter what else the comp is. Like King Arthur fits well here.
I think part of his strength is that he kind of can do both. Yeah, I agree with Jarcorrr and Nika in that, like, if you play through him and uses pressure, because he has so much setup and just so much like raw damage in the early to mid game, that you can definitely like, win the game through his lane. But I think part of his strength as well is that he is very hard to gank because all of his abilities and even his auto attacks give him movement, and he just has so much utility from that, like root immunity, slow immunity, and stuff like that. And since he's really hard to gank, you can also not play through his lane and just like let him sit there, win the 1v1 because he probably will. And then he also can probably defend his own blue buffs because it's hard for him to die if he goes beads or if he goes blink and just kind of chills. So you can kind of do both. That's why I think he's played so much. If he was only like an aggressive god that you had to play through his lane, I think you'd see him less just because he'd be a liability at some points. But he's just so strong at both that he just can kind of be picked wherever.
And I'm happy you mentioned it, because, again, we've talked about his abilities a couple of times there, but you had mentioned it again there. And that's where I think things get kind of complicated with King Arthur, right? I mean, he has 2 sets of abilities that come through for everything. Even his ult has 2 versions that you can have, whether when you use it. So I want to know, I guess, going to the very beginning, and for all I know, you all might have the same answer here, but going to you, Fine, first, how do you level King Arthur? Like, what ability do you focus on first? Is it just to help you with lane clear, or can you really just kind of throw it at any points?
Yeah, I think what happens with like stance changers, and I guess he's not exactly a stance changer, but he changes stances when he uses an ability. You don't actually have the option. People get a little like overwhelmed and maybe think it's more complicated than it needs to be. I don't know about Nika and Jarcorrr, but this is coming from somebody that has played the god a ton, is pretty good at it. You don't have to really worry about which stance you're in for the most part. You kind of just go around the map if you just happen to be in your blue stance as you walk towards the blue buff, that's fine. If you walk towards the lane and you're in yellow stance, it's not a big deal. You don't really have to think about it all that much. So don't overcomplicate it. But as far as leveling goes, you basically just always max the 1. It's just really good base damage. It hits really hard, and it is pretty easy to hit. The yellow one is basically unmissable. And you can sometimes in certain matchups, if you really wanted to, you could max the 3, but I just don't see the point in that. A lot of times you're using it for just like movement, and it's just a lot harder to confirm the whole thing. There's going to be a lot of interrupts on the enemy team usually. But yeah, you max the 1 and then you max the 3 second. And there's some scenarios where you can max the 2 second if they really just have so many interrupts that you're never going to get any of your yellow 3 off. But for the most part, it's just 1, 3, put points into your ult whenever you can, and then max the 2 last.
And Jarcorrr, is it pretty much the same for you? Focus on the 1, go to 3, or do you have maybe a different approach to the levels of King Arthur?
Yeah, I used to do like leveling the tree, like just 2 points in the tree, because with that you can like full clear the way level 3 like so easily. But I mean, besides that, I think yeah, the 1 is like way better to level up.
And Nika, are you on the same boat? Just go for the 1. It's a little bit easier, and it's just kind of better for you all around.
I always max the 1, but like level 2, I'll get my 2. I know a lot of people get their 3, but that ability sucks rank 1. If you actually use it on the guy in the wave, you'll take way more damage, and you'll probably do 0 damage to the wave. And I always try and get a second point on my 3 as well, because it triples the damage, so it's pretty high value point. But yeah, other than that, I agree with what both of them said.
Yeah, just a little bit of early game shifting there for you, right, to make things go forward. And Fineokay, you had actually kind of mentioned this, and this goes to my next question, that you think people tend to overcomplicate his abilities and kind of keeping track of them. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's yellow or blue. You just, like, whatever you have, like, just go for it, right? And I want to know, like, for Nika and Jarcorrr, and Nika, we'll start with you. How does this affect his skill ceiling? Like, do you think people overcomplicate it as well, or do you think that's something you have to keep track of in your head each time you're walking somewhere?
You can play around like combos like stun, knock up 1, or like trying to chain with your ultimates and stuff with other people, but like Fine said, at the end of the day, you can run at anyone with any stance, any ability, and like something's going to be up for you to hit them with, so it's not that big of a deal. But obviously, like, there always will be like a correct way to use your abilities, the correct way to chain your CC, and that just comes with like playing the god a lot and knowing what's best to use in the right scenario.
And is that, I just want to know, like, is that something that you actively think about? Like, if you're in the Pro League, like, do you think, okay, I'm going to use this now so I have the stun so we can set up this fight? Or does it just kind of happen to be like, hey, wait, actually, guys, wait, I have my stun out right now. Do you want to go for a fight?
I feel like I play around the stun a lot. Like, I try and use it as much as I can, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll be like, oh, like, sometimes what happens, I don't know if it happens to you guys, it's like, you're just playing and you try and stun someone and you have big ult by accident. It's like, oh, oh, okay, we'll come in on this guy, I guess.
So Jarcorrr, I guess for you, in the same vein, like, do you consciously think about, okay, if I use this ability, I'm going to have this set up, you know, or is it just kind of let it go with the flow, whatever you happen to have at the time is really where you go? You don't focus too much on it, you just kind of let the god play.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like, it doesn't even matter. I mean, I like a lot to use Blink Knockup on people, because it's like so hard to react to, because once you are in the air, yeah, it's nothing that you can do. You cannot beast when you are in the air. So I use blinking out to knock up people in the air and use Alten or Cripple or whatever. I think that's good. So, and for knock up people, I think it's the yellow stance. So I've been in the yellow stance on Blink. I think like good for you.
So, and everyone has kind of mentioned this, at least on a very edge, and there's a few questions I have about his ult, because the way that you will use it versus the way that you'll see it in, you know, a casual game, even in a ranked game, is just going to be drastically different. And I'm trying to decide which one of these is the smart one to begin with, but I guess at the very beginning, because Nika, you had just mentioned it, how do you decide when you want to use big ult versus small ult, and how hard is it to like set that up mentally to know, okay, I can go in now and I'll have exactly the one I need as long as I don't do X?
I mean, late game sometimes you'll struggle to even get enough charge. Like if you ever die late game and respawn, like you're probably just gonna be playing around stuns for like the rest of the game. But it's not a bad thing. Like that stun is insane. Mm-hmm. It like comes out super quick. It's long range. You can always chain it with your knockup. So I think in comp a lot of the time you are looking for plays with your stun. But if your big ult's up, then you can just like, it's like the best engage in a fight. Like you'll instantly force a carry's beads, do like 600 damage, and like everyone's just gonna be looking around like, oh, like their whole team's going in now, so we probably just lose the fight. So I think that's pretty much all there is to it.
And same thing for you, Fine? Like, is there like a lot of difficulty maybe going in saying I want big ult, or like do you ever have a moment where you want the big ult, or is it kind of I want small ult, if I have big ult, then oh well, it just happens.
Well, you kind of always, at least in team fights, you kind of always want to like be looking at your sword to see like what your charge is at, because you can gain energy pretty fast, especially with the build where you're just 6 tank items, right? That's why King Arthur is so strong. You go tank boots, you go 5 other items that just help you survive in the team fights, and then you have all these abilities and this movement to just make you survive just a little bit longer. And if you're always keeping an eye on your sword, I would recommend if you're in the middle of a team fight and you're near their carries and you have your stun, but they're like, still full health or anything like that, I would just recommend like being patient and waiting for that charge ult, because you're going to most of the time do a lot more damage with the charge ult, just because, they're going to, if they don't have beads, then they're going to take the whole amount of damage, which is a lot of damage. If they do have beads, they're still going to take a lot of damage because it still does a lot of damage for some reason. But, and then as far as like knowing which one to use, I would just say that, hopefully you can start every team fight and every fight in a 1v1 with a charge ult by just sitting there and gaining your energy, or already having it and starting it with that. And then after like 5 seconds or whatever the cooldown is, you can use the stun after you use the charge ult. And that's when you'll get the most value. And that's when you'll feel like a very OP character, because you basically just have 2 ultimates.
Jarcorrr, are you in pretty much the same boat, right? If you have it and you're near the carries, go for locking them down, try to get the beads and the damage, as Fineokay pointed out, that it's still just a little ridiculous to come out of a warrior? Or are you looking mainly for setup and maybe trying to keep it as a small ult coming forward?
Nah, I think if you have the charge ult, it's always going to be better for you, because it's not only like a way to engage. It can be like your escape too, or you can be immune to something. So for example, they want to like commit on you, they use abilities, and you just go up in the air, and that's gonna fight that you're gonna win, because like you avoid something like by going in the air too. So like having your charge ult is always good. So like a thing that would recommend like all the time, if you can, when like you have someone to split, you can like send the Arthur to split. He can like charge his ward with creeps. So unless you need like a little bit of energy, that will be good for you. So you can have like, I don't know, full ult for your fight, or the sword you do not have it. So like killing creeps is nice for him.
And that's, I guess, like another portion of it, right? Is managing your energy and kind of keeping track of that, knowing like, am I going to have like this large ult that's going to pull me maybe out of things, or am I just going again for like the setup? So I guess for you, at least in Sanguine, when you're playing, is that something that you're again kind of consciously like, okay, I'm at this much energy. If I want to do this for the next team fight, I need to go farm? Or is it kind of like what you said, where it's like, we need someone to split, I'm going to do it, I'm King Arthur, it's better for me, let me just go do this?
I mean, like most of the time in comp at least, I think you have you like normal ult. So we like maybe most of the time you play around that, like say guys, I gonna stun this guy, and then like all the CC comes to that guy. So yeah, it's like you use that. So, and yeah, you have to split. I'm probably saying, yo guys, I need to charge my ult, so I'm probably gonna kill those creeps first. Then I can maybe come if you wanna fight. So like, it always gonna depend. So what do you think you want to do?
And Nika, for you, like, how do you get enough energy? Like, how do you manage that when you're going forward in the team fight? Is it very much the same, where it's like go off and just split push?
Yeah, or you just find like a support, and you just hit them with like a couple abilities. They're usually pretty dumb. They're just running around like trying to ward, and that's like an easy energy gain for sure. But yeah, splitting the waves is pretty good. It's not that much energy, but it definitely helps. And then, like Jock said, you'll probably just have your stun most fights in comp, and then like Fine said, if you're just patient in the fight, you'll probably gain enough energy for the charge ult, which is like, it's GG if you can get that ult like mid fight, I'd say.
And fine, like Nika just said, you said to be kind of patient in it. Are you looking like at that point, if you want your charged ult and you want more energy in the late game team fights, are you really exclusively looking to beat on gods, or is there ever a point where you're like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna run off over here for a little bit, try to either get a farm, maybe a camp, something that's gonna give some sort of energy, and then come back into it and see what I can do? Or is it just like you said, play patiently, just keep beating up the carries?
You can kind of do either, I think. Like, I think you should always be looking to get a little bit of energy from like the environment, or there's like creeps or just like objectives or anything like that. But it doesn't really give all that much, and the bulk of your energy is going to be coming from hitting gods because you gain more energy from them. Um, so I would say like you don't even. What's funny about Arthur is you don't even. Jarcorrr kind of said it before. You don't even have to engage with your ult. Like you could blink knock up somebody with your yellow 2, and that could be a good start to a fight. You could blink cripple somebody or blink slow into a knock up into a cripple, and that's a good start to a fight. And then already, if you're hitting like 1, 2, maybe even 3 gods with those abilities, you're going to be gaining energy in that, and then you're going to quickly get your charge ultimate. And since you're the one engaging and you're really tanky, like they're not just going to immediately turn on you and one shot you, especially if you have beads, which I recommend going on Arthur. Like you're just going to blink in, survive for a while. You're going to use your beads. You're going to use all your movement. You're going to get your energy up. And I would say probably the hardest part about Arthur, I think the character is probably, people overcomplicate him, like I said before, but probably the hardest part about him is just keeping an eye on your health bar and your charge, so you can kind of decide what you want to do in the middle of a fight. So that's probably something that people would need to practice the most. But like I said, you can engage with basically anything, and I would say for the most part, be a little bit patient in the team fights because you'll get energy pretty fast.
And you mentioned, specifically, like, and Jarcorrr has mentioned it as well, but like blink engages, getting into the backline, how, your ult can be really good full charge against certain carries, whether it burns beads or just deals the damage. Either way, you're pretty happy. And I want to know, like, for King Arthur, is your main goal in disrupting a team fight getting to the backline and harassing the carries like it is with a lot of warriors? Or is there ever a moment where you want to get aggressive into the tanks and try to control them at all?
That's, another reason that character is so good is that he can kind of do both. Obviously, it kind of depends. It kind of depends on the meta as well. Right now, it's really important to get on the carries, so that's kind of just what you want to do. That's why you go blink on him. But he has so much CC and setup that he can easily set up for his carries, like hit a frontliner and then all of a sudden run towards the backline to zone them out as they try and kill the front line. And you could do weird stuff, like say they have like a full dive comp where they have like a set mid, or like I don't know, some crazy dive comp with like a Zhang and ADC. I don't know, something crazy. You could literally just sit there with your carries and CC for them and like take people into the air when they're trying to dive, and it would be really annoying for them as well. You'll do a lot of peel. So you can kind of do both, but you should probably dive the backline for the most part.
Nika, are you in the same vein? You just get to the back line, deal with their carries, or is there ever... Well, I guess there's always going to be some moments where the tanks are a little bit better. Is it, like, what's the split for you?
I think he's a really good anti-jungler as well. Like, most junglers don't have Aegis late game as well, so if you just blink on them and run them down, if you have any of your ults and a Pridwin shield, like, if you keep the jungler out, your carries are probably going to be fine as well for the most of the fight, but... Yeah, I'd say I prioritize carries, then junglers, and then front line if they need it, if they need the help.
And Jarcorrr, in a world where you can beat up anybody because you're King Arthur, are you still also going for the carries in the backline? I mean, the blink engage you had already kind of mentioned. You were the one who kind of prioritized that earlier in the conversation. Is that just kind of your go-to play?
Yeah, I always try to hit the carry when you can. I mean, I think it will depends, I guess, what carry are you? Because right now there is like some OP carry that you can really go on.
Rama,
If you
dude.
go, yeah, if you go on them, you're just gonna die. For example, like Nika brought up like early before. If you blink in a Ra and he has his tree on, you're gonna be like so useless if the team is around him. So you have like to really look up at what carry are you going to, or what abilities they are on CD or whatever. But yeah, like most of the time you are blinking on a carry or a jungler, and then see what happens.
Yeah. As always, it's so team fight dependent and comp dependent that it's difficult to kind of go forward with and tackle at just a general scenario. But, generally, we've talked about a few items that came through. Like, we had mentioned that Glad Shield's nerf kind of made him disappear, even though, as Fineokay had pointed out, and all of you have pointed out, that didn't necessarily really hurt him as much as we think it did at the very beginning of the year. And Blink has been mentioned, Beads has been mentioned. I want to know, like, what items, relics, what have you, do you think are kind of essential for King Arthur, or something that you can get generally every game and not worry too much about? And Jarcorrr, we'll go to you first. Like, what items do you think of when you think of King Arthur?
I think about tank boots because I think they are like the best boots to that god. I mean, you can go warrior tab and like a lot of damage, but if you go tank boots, you're gonna do almost the same damage and you're gonna be like unkillable. Like they can gank you if you play the well and you have beats or blink or your all every single time. So you're gonna be like so safe, or you can be like so aggressive too. The Gaia was like the thing that make you feel stronger. So when you get the spike, it's like gonna be like so good for you. Even they don't have knockups, because a lot of people always ask that yo Gaia is good even they don't have knockup. Yeah, it is good because the healing and the stats of the item is just pretty good overall. A lot of people is building a Glacial. I think it's good, but I think Void is like overall better because you're going like gonna do like more damage with Void. But I mean, it feels good to have like the cooldown on the health of Glad, and when you have more prots, you can get like more value of the new Glad, the Glad that do like more damage based on your prots. And I think another item, maybe yeah, the last one,
Yeah.
gonna be like Prywin because I think Prywin feels so good with that god because the cooldown is like always necessary. I think and the shield when you stomp someone and when you get up in the air gonna be help you for you in a team fight. So
A
it's
lot
a
of
nice
fun ones.
item.
I'll admit when I asked that question, I wasn't really expecting the boots conversation to come up immediately because I at least me had never thought too much about it. Right, tank boots versus warrior tabby. So I'm gonna take that one. Go ahead and pocket that for later. Nika, I want to know like at least for boots, like are you on the same boat there? And what other items,
Yeah.
or if they're all the same, like what items do you think of when you think of King Arthur?
I mean, yeah, tank boots just make him like way stronger early game and really hard to gank because obviously the CCR, the prots, the health, like everything comes into play. He has really good base damage, so you don't really need the power from Warrior Tabby as well. Gaia, yeah, like that's his like core item, I'd say, to help him through early game.
Mm-hmm.
And with Void and Glads, I try and get both of them into a build, but yeah, Void will give you way more damage as soon as you get it, obviously. But sometimes you might want Glad because obviously it's more health. It's like more it's cooldown as well, which is always nice on a god who just spams abilities. I'd say it's just like a preference thing. It's cheaper as well. And then I think Pridwin is like his like second best item after Gaia. Like it's so OP on him late game. Just having that huge health shield and extra damage, like it can really swing a fight, I think.
And fine, I guess in the same boat, like are most of these items pretty much the ones you're going for? Are there any others that maybe come to your mind for King Arthur?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, you could always throw in like a mantle or spirit robe last item to round out the build. I'd say that Oni Hunters is a really good item in him as well, just because even though all of his abilities don't really cost that much mana, you just use them a lot. So if you don't have any mana items in your build, come late game, you will go pretty quickly if you're just like spamming your abilities and living throughout the whole team fight. So throwing in like an Onis or a Genjis is pretty good, especially if you go like a Glad Shield and a Void Shield. A Genjis is really nice because your abilities actually do so much damage that if you just can get those back up in a team fight, you'll end up like killing multiple people or doing really well in the team fight. And yeah, tank boots. The last thing I would say about tank boots is that just because the character, like if you can survive literally 3 more seconds than you would have without the other, like with Warrior Tabi, it's going to get you another ability off, maybe 2 abilities. It's going to allow you to use another auto attack to gain some like distance between you and the enemies. It's going to maybe allow you to get out of combat to use your blink. Like the character just does so much base damage that it's really hard to justify going Warrior Tabi. Apart from the only time I would ever say you should go Warrior Tabi is if you really feel like you need to win the early game and win your lane by just like killing the enemy solo. Like that's the only time you're gonna, like, I don't know, possibly win the game. Then I could see you going Warrior Tabi. But I think as far as Arthur, he's probably the only solo that's like this. But tank boots is always the play.
Well, there you go. I think that might be my number one tip I'm coming out of this one with, at least for me, is to start off my early games better as Arthur. That and trying to keep track of his abilities. I'll learn a little bit more out of that. But now we're at the kind of, I want to say this is the most difficult question because it's not necessarily about Arthur directly. It's not what do you do that makes him better. It's how do you stop him? I mean, we've mentioned so many things about King Arthur that are just good. He's got great abilities, good CC, he's really good at surviving. There's a lot that makes it difficult. So how do you stop him? Like, how do you counter him out? I'll go, you know what, fine, okay, we'll just jump right back to you. Like, what is it, I guess, either if you're playing King Arthur that you hate to see on the other side, or if you see him locked in that you know can counter him and help lock him down?
Well, I'd say it kind of depends. In comp, you can do multiple things just because there's a lot more communication, a lot more teamwork, and you can work around, maybe the negatives of certain matchups. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think what you can do is you can match his pressure early on so that he doesn't just win the early game and the mid game and just come over to team fights dominating. So that means you can pick stuff like Osiris, Cthulhu, Achilles, stuff that just has like good matchups into him, and just make sure he doesn't like run rampant and go around doing whatever he wants. But in comp, you can get away with a little bit more. You can be a little bit more greedy and try and be more useful in the mid to late game. But I mean, that's kind of, I mean, we've been talking about the problem. The problem is that like he doesn't even have like a bad mid to late game, so he can just dominate the early game, dominate the mid game. So it's tough. I mean, that's part of the reason he has a high win rate, and that's part of the reason he's just like a good character and he's valued really high, is that it's hard to counter him even in an SPL setting. But I would recommend, if you see like an Arthur locked in your ranked games on the enemy team and you're feeling scared or anything like that, just pick something like Achilles, just pick something like Cthulhu. And as long as you know the matchup, you're not going to die to him. You're not going to lose the lane really all that much. And then you're going to be just as useful mid to late game. So just try and match his pressure a little bit.
Survive the early game. Honestly, yeah, that's a good one, I think, to come forward. And difficult to do at that. So good luck, I guess, for everyone out there that's going to tackle it. That being said, I think it's a fun one. Nika, what about for you? Like, are there any gods in your mind that specifically counter him, or is it much like Fine said, where you just kind of make it through, don't let him get that pressure early on, and then you should still have the same effect late game?
Yeah, pretty much all the gods he said. I think Guan is really good as well. Into Arthur, I've always liked that matchup. Sets up really good ganks as well for the jungler with his ult if he doesn't start beads. Late game, cripples will always be annoying, but like obviously beads makes that a lot less important. But like Ares, Artio, Cupid, like those gods are never fun to go against as Arthur. Like just being slowed down in like your flow of like your abilities not great. You kind of want to be free casting. Healing is pretty annoying sometimes from behind, especially. Like the healers are pretty easy to go on if you're in like an even game or winning, but like playing against Ra or Hell from behind, like you're probably just gonna be useless. But so will any solo laner in a way. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. He's just pretty good into most stuff. I don't think he has any like direct counters, like other than just like playing around him well, pretty much punishing him early and like maybe just building like a burst comp to take him down quickly before he gets too much off in a fight.
Man, these are the scariest gods. When there's like not a, okay, well this god can help counter him, and it's just, yeah, you just gotta outplay them. It's where things get a little more murky in the waters. Jarcorrr, I think, it had been mentioned, there's a couple of gods like Osiris, Cthulhu, Guan, as Nika just mentioned. But for you, like, what helps control King Arthur the most?
I think he should use a general like soul lane thing, but like playing against a circuit jungle is always gonna be so annoying for you. Because even if you have beats, for example, like she blinks, Cobra keys you into one, you beat that, then she ults you, pull you back, and you have like a good solo lane pick, you will die of that. So like playing against a circuit, I think is gonna be like always annoying for you. Or even a support that's gonna be like aware that you can die so easily if you get like Nika said cripple or CC into that. You can get beats, but the thing is that you can use those beats like every single time.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. Yeah, like CC use skill the god a lot, but you can always play. Like, you can immune something with your ult, so it's gonna be like hard for you because you have indeed like two CC immune things if you ult correctly. So, I think.
Yeah, nice little few gods out there that can come and give him a lot of trouble. And CC, and like you had said earlier, Fine, in the right competitive setting with all that communication, he's not as difficult to tackle as he might be if it's just, ends up against one of you three guys in ranked, playing him, having fun. That might be a little too difficult to try and take on, but otherwise, seems like he can still be tackled in competitive play. But either way, guys, we've been sitting here talking about it. The last question I have for each of you is just going to be to shout yourself out. Where can we find you on the internet, whether it's Twitter, streams, what have you? Fineokay, you can go first.
It's just Fineokay on Twitch, Fineokay_ on Twitter, and Dude I'm Fonz, or if you just type in Fineokay Smite on YouTube, you should be able to find me, and that's all I got.
There you go. Jarcorrr, what about you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I still have my X. I don't know why I forgot, need to change it. But I X Jarcorrr on Twitter, and I stream on Twitch sometimes with twitch.tv/Jarcorrr with 3 R's. Jarcorrr. So yeah.
You have to 3 R's. Make sure you count them out
Yeah,
when you
3 Rs,
spell it.
yeah,
Otherwise, you'll
3
end up on some other Jarcorrr, and he's not the real
Yeah,
one. He
no,
won't give you any tips or any fun streams at all. Nika, what about for you? Where can people find you?
Nika on Twitch, and I don't really tweet, so don't worry about that.
It's all about the numbers, Nika. Come on, go follow. Like, if you want to, you can follow Nika on Twitter. It might not give you a whole lot, but it'll make sure that the numbers go up either way. But thanks everyone for watching, and subscribe, of course, if you enjoyed this, because there's going to be tons of more content with pros just like these that comes out. You can leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit us up on Twitter or in the comments at SMITEPro on Twitter, or just here on this video for who you would like to look at in the next Grandmasters class. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Thank you three for joining me for this and talking about King Arthur. I hope you three have a wonderful day, as well as everyone who is watching this. We'll see you in the next video.